My girlfriend was violated while in the process of cheating on me. I don't know what to do from here. I've been sitting here for like 15 minutes trying to figure out how to start this. My head is completely spinning, my thoughts are just all over the place. I guess with the backstory, I've been dating Sarah, not using real names, for just under 2 years now. She has a close friend John, who she's known since she was a child. I never liked him. He was always a little creepy, blatantly flirted with Sarah for the entirety of our relationship, and made occasional passes that I was not comfortable with. So, cut to like 2 weeks back, Sarah and I were invited to a gathering/party by a mutual friend. I had a workshop for work that night so I couldn't attend, and with current circumstances, I was never inclined to go anyways. I didn't want Sarah to go either, but she was very adamant, and I guess I just didn't want an argument so I said fine. We ended up running into John later that day and he mentioned the same party, and asked us if we had been invited as well. My girlfriend told him she was going but I wasn't, and he got this weird smile on his face and said something along the lines of, "If you're going, I guess I have to go." Just something about his smile and way he said it really rubbed me the wrong way. Plus, I didn't want to be possessive, but the idea of the both of them together all night at a party did not sit with me well. After we got back to our apartment, I told her, a bit more firmly this time, that I'm not comfortable with her going to the party, especially with him there. She told me I was overreacting and shut down the conversation at that. I'm sure most of you can figure out where this is going. I went to the workshop and she went to the party. It got to be like 2 a.m. and she hadn't gotten home, nor was answering my calls. Naturally, I was incredibly worried. About an hour later, one of her friends called me and told me was found unconscious at the party and driven to the hospital. She was violated by John. After spending 2 days including that night at the hospital and talking with police, I took her home. She told me John spiked her, and dragged her upstairs where it happened in one of the bedrooms. House the party was at is very large. She was an absolute mess, she didn't want to go outside, she wasn't eating, had terrible nightmares. I did everything I could to comfort her through this process. I was devastated for her and hated to see her like this, but, and I know this makes me sound like a terrible person, I don't blame her for John forcing her, but I couldn't get the fact I tried more than once to dissuade her from going to the party, and specifically saying her being with John makes me uncomfortable, out of my head. I feel I could have done more to protect her, and she should have listened to how I felt. Important side note, turns out John is a literal living garbage. After her ordeal, we both felt it was best to get justice. There were substances in her system, and all the physical indications of force. We immediately filed a restraining order and the police opened an investigation. Within the span on a week after news had gotten around, 2 other girls came forward with similar encounter with John, so the guy is basically a serial offender. Cut to now, my girlfriend is still in no better shape than she was 2 weeks ago. She gets panic attacks out of nowhere, she's lost like 15 pounds and absolutely refuses to leave our apartment, even to seek therapy. I was committed to taking care of her and being there for her, but I got a call from one of my close friends Sam this morning. It was a long conversation, but it basically boiled down to him, as well as many others at the party that night, saw Sarah flirting with John the entire beginning of the party. According to him and people he had been talking to, she was at the very least matching if not being the initiator in these exchanges with John. He also recounts that she wasn't blackout drunk or seemingly that out of it, and worst of all, many saw her holding John's hand taking John upstairs. At this point I feel like I want to vomit. He told me he wanted the situation to cool down a bit before telling me, and was going to tell me after the party what happened, but with her being taken to the hospital under the circumstances, he didn't feel it was the right time. I decided to not assume anything and asked her about the specifics about what happened that night. She tried to tell me the same thing, that she was spiked and dragged to a bedroom. But when I told her what Sam had told me, the color completely drained from her face. She started to panic and I did my best to calm her down, but it was at least 30 minutes before she could catch her breath to speak. She was sobbing, but she was coherent enough to understand, and basically confessed to cheating on me. She said she was drunk, and hadn't been out for so long she wanted some adventure. She admitted she was the one that took John to the bedroom, and wasn't dragged there against her will. She kept apologizing and saying it was a terrible mistake, and that nothing else was a lie. He did force her. I believe the last part. As far as I can understand now, it was when they were in the bedroom fooling around when he slipped something into her or something like that, then he forced himself on her. I don't know what to do anymore. She was violated, but to me, everything before that was her still intending to cheat and actively cheating on me. I am devastated and I don't even want to look at her right now. I left the apartment and am currently at Sam's house. I don't know anything anymore. She lost her job to COVID, I pay rent for the apartment where her name isn't on the lease, and groceries. She's become completely emotionally dependent on me the past few weeks. If I do break up with her, she would have nowhere to go, and as much as I resent her, I don't want something terrible happening to her. Please help, I need advice, don't know what to do. Edit. There's been a lot of responses in a short time, so I thought it would be best to address some things here. First off, I've been made aware that 2 posts of somewhat similar situations have been posted to this sub in the past 2 weeks or so. I don't know what I could post here to prove this is true without exposing my privacy. So I'm sorry, but all I can do is give you my word. I'm just here looking for advice. I don't think this is something someone should be fantasizing for a karma farm, it's completely upended my life. Second thing is people questioning Sarah's account of the events. I didn't include every detail because I'm just trying to get my thoughts out, but her story matches the other 2 women who came forward in terms of the pattern of John's behavior. The 2 other women were also initially in a consensual environment before he spiked them and violated them. From what they've said and posted, a large part of the reason they didn't come forward was because it started as consensual, and they thought that would make them not be believed. I also didn't want to get too graphic, but the nature of Sarah's ordeal was very violent, and not something most anybody would consent to. So that may be why he spikes them first as well. She had and still has traces of large bruises around her neck and other parts of her body, as well as scratches and gashes. I don't really doubt at all she was indeed attacked. The substance found in her system was caffeine. While Sarah did enjoy partying, she never did anything harder than grass. Third, Sarah has been living abroad for school since starting college. Her parents have been made aware of the situation, but coming from a very religious background, while concerned for her well-being, aren't exactly being supportive, nor have put in the effort to come see her. She never had many close friends for as long as I've known her other than John. I don't know where she would go if I told her she can't stay at my apartment. Now for the top advice before reading the update. Wow, I think you need to step away from this relationship. At the very least she did lie and cheat on you. No matter how it ended, she did lie and cheat. I'm terribly sorry for how it ended for her, and I'm sorry she got hurt. There is never an excuse to force action on anyone, so I can't even imagine what she is going through. That isn't an excuse to cheat and lie though. Agreed, OP should likely end this since she fully admits to intending to cheat. Although it is terrible what happened afterwards, it doesn't discount what she did before. However, and this is important, I believe that she will likely frame such a scenario as, my boyfriend broke up with me because I was attacked, and I don't think that this is a massive stretch, since she has already demonstrated that she can be deceitful through her unfaithfulness. In which case OP had better be prepared to be seen as the bad guy in the aftermath, as people will also likely side with her over him, all conjecture though. Probably going to be unpopular, but I'd say break up with her. What happened to her was horrible, but you shouldn't date a cheater. Rather than dating her, maybe stay by her side as a friend, get her into therapy if she isn't already. But yeah, that's not a good relationship to keep going forward. Not that unpopular apparently. Break up, even though she was forced, she still cheated on you and lied about it. She probably has friends or family she can stay with and depend 100% on. That is not your job and it may lead to more resentment. Not to mention how she worded the lie. Not to overshadow the fact that in the end, she was attacked, but that definitely would have done something to you mentally, picturing your girlfriend unconscious and dragged upstairs, when really, she was holding his hand and guiding him upstairs. To think she would stretch a lie that far to cover up her cheating, really doesn't sit right. And now for the update. I needed some time to sort out the situation, but I did read most as many replies as I could, and I appreciate all the advice and messages, especially from those who had been put in similar situations as I guess I should start by clearing a few things up. First off, to everyone who thought my story had holes in it, it definitely did, and I'm sorry for that. At the time and even now, I was missing a lot of information and was filling in holes as best I could with what I had. I also didn't want the post to get too long, so I left out information that I guess would have painted a better picture of my situation. I'll try my best to include those missing details. If you're just interested in the update, skip down a few paragraphs. So details about John. He is part of Sarah and I's social circle and lives quite close to us. Some of the behavior from John towards Sarah that made me uncomfortable throughout the course of our relationship included constantly making comments about her body, putting his arm around her every chance he could, asking her to go with him on trip to Europe last summer, just the two of them. Poking her front when she's wearing tight clothing, saying things like I'm lucky I met her when I did, or she would have been with him by now, etc. It's not any one thing, but an accumulation of everything that made me uncomfortable with her spending a lot of time with him. She never encouraged his behavior, at least when I was around, but didn't actively discourage it either. Despite me openly talking to her about my boundaries, she just brushed it off as them knowing each other for so long and being comfortable with one another. A few smaller details I guess were relevant I should mention. 1. We are not in the US. COVID, while still obviously an issue in our country, our area is relatively COVID-free, and everyone going to the party Sarah went to were part of our larger social circle. It was at a large condo a friend of ours was renting for the summer. It was not some open invite party with 100+ people. Still dumb, I know, there were 30-ish, maybe 40 people there, so in hindsight, yeah, no one should have been at the party to begin with. Lastly, clearing up both Sarah and I's financial situation. I am lucky enough to have my parents paying for my tuition whatever scholarships didn't cover, so I can focus my resources on just day-to-day living costs like rent, groceries, etc. Sarah on the other hand was pretty much thrown to the wolves after finishing high school. Her parents, like I stated in my edit, are very religious and very controlling, so they told Sarah they were only going to pay for her schooling if she went to a local college. She refused and came to my school. She lived in residency for her first 2 years, which was covered by financial aid. I got my apartment about a year ago, and with COVID and her not wanting to go back home, we decided it would be best if she moved in with me. Her finances are basically completely tied up on tuition and student loans, so I offered to keep paying full rent despite her living with me full-time. Actual update: oh boy, I wish I could say things have gotten more clear in the past week, but honestly it's been a total clusterfuck, and it's only gotten worse. I spent a few days at Sam's, reaching out to friends trying to get a clearer picture of what happened that night, before going back to talk to Sarah. I got told same story multiple times, that she was the one who started flirting with John and led him upstairs. I should say right now, in my first conversation with Sarah confronting her, she didn't explicitly say she had intended to sleep with him that night, she just confirmed she took him upstairs. She was basically having panic attack throughout the entire conversation, so I had a hard time pushing for clarity. So by this point in my heart, I was trying to find any excuse at all for her to save our relationship, but my mind was telling me that the relationship was over, at least for the time being. But as many of you commented, despite my obvious grief in losing a 2-year relationship, I decided I'd be willing to let her stay in my apartment again rent-free to at least the end of October, to sort out other living arrangements and support. I called her about 3 days after staying at Sam's, and told her I'm willing to listen to her side of the story, but I need the complete truth about everything, and she agreed. So I went back to my apartment later that evening. We sat down and I asked her about what really happened that night. She started crying right away, but not panicking, and told she had to tell me something about herself. Sarah has always been into the partying scene more than me. I've never really been comfortable around illicit substances and that environment in general, but I went with her anyways about once a month or so. Her on the other hand, would have girls' nights out, and parties pretty much every weekend. Right at the beginning of our relationship I told her I'm not really comfortable being with someone that isn't involved with hard DUs. My brother has a history of addiction, and I've seen what it can do to somebody and the people around them. She told me that's fine since she only drinks and smokes grass occasionally. Well, it turns out for about a year now, she started doing harder stuff at parties when I'm not there, and her girls' nights were often just her and some from our social circle, John included, going to a friend's apartment to do shrooms. I was shocked to say the least, and I didn't even know what to think in that moment. I just tried to ask her more about what happened on the night she was taken advantage of, and if she was intending on cheating on me that night. She comes clean and tells me she did lead John upstairs, but swears she wasn't trying to sleep with him, but wanted D's. He told her it was coke, but obviously it was not since only fentanyl and alcohol showed up in her system at the hospital. She told me he immediately started coming onto her, but she tried to fight him off, but eventually she was too out of it to fight back. After consoling her for a while, I asked her what her relationship with John was really like before, and if they did anything together before what happened that night. She admitted that they made out a few times before around Christmas last year, but promised it didn't go any further than that. She was begging me to forgive her, and that she needs me in her life. That she just was in a rebellious phase, because of her upbringing. I didn't know what to believe anymore, and still don't, to be honest. I just was completely overwhelmed by everything. So I told her I needed to clear my head and left again. Sam was nice enough to let me stay at his place again. I talked to some of my friends she said she was doing substances with, and they confirmed. I was pretty upset at them for hiding it from me, but they told me she basically forced them to keep it a secret from me. It feels like so much of my relationship was a lie. She wasn't the person I thought she was, and she lied constantly for who knows how long. At this point, my mind is basically made up, so I call her and told her it's over, but she can stay at my apartment till the end of October, but only if she finds a therapist and gets help during that time. She basically lost it during the call, but my mind was made up, so I just said I'll be staying at Sam's for a while and hung up. I wish that was the last of the crap that happened, but literally a day after that I start getting spammed with hate messages and calls from friends, relatives, and people I don't even know. Turns out she's posted all over social media about how I was breaking up with her because she was violated, and was kicking her out with nowhere to go in these COVID times. She also wrote that I've been emotionally mistreating her after her incident, victim blaming her, and stopping her from getting a therapist. I'm completely lost. I'm furious, heartbroken, I can't even describe all the emotions I felt. I called her again that night, and told her she has 2 weeks to move out now, and I don't want to hear from her again. I had to spend the past week playing damage control, trying to clear my name on social media, calling friends and family. I was ostracized by co-workers, though luckily my boss was on my side. I was getting doxxed, death threats, my life basically fell apart. Sam, thank God, was completely understanding through all of this, and said I could stay at his place until Sarah moved out. She's moving out on Friday, but I don't want to go back to that apartment anymore. I've had to cut out friends. My reputation is now in the dumps. I lost the first and only person I've ever loved. I don't know anymore. I low-key want to die, but I'll find a therapist sooner or later. I just feel numb to everything. I don't even know if I'm right or wrong in this situation anymore. I hope I haven't rambled on too much. I know this post is really long, but thank you really for everyone who showed support in the last post, it meant a lot. Edit. Someone's comment made me realize she was still lying to me, the second time I talked to her. She changed her story about what she was spiked with, and I didn't even realize. I was not told by the hospital what she had in her system, and I'm not very knowledgeable on these substances in general. All that information I had came from Sarah. I don't even know if she was spiked against her will at all at this point. God, I'm doubting everything now. This is not the person I thought she was. I don't even care, she's out of my life now. Now for the closing comments. Yo man, this whole situation is messed up. But right now, you gotta worry about yourself and not the friends, the apartment, or even her. I know it sounds dumb, but those kinds of thoughts can turn south really quickly. Do you have a friend you can maybe crash with for a few days, or someone you can sit down and talk to? If not, feel free to reach out to me, man, even if you just want to shoot the stuff, but no one should be alone after going through something like this. Thanks, man. I have a good friend I can stay with for the time being. I really appreciate the offer. I'm still trying to put pieces back together at the moment. I'll reach out if I need to. Dude, not to be callous, but you have bigger fish to fry. She publicly claimed you mistreated her. That can go south pretty quickly. You need to consult an attorney about combating the claims she's made against you, because those could lead to criminal charges. Generally speaking, a cease and desist letter from a lawyer should be enough to get her to take things off of social media and revoke the claims. Best of luck. Holy smokes. While reading this, I actually thought this girl you loved is human garbage, but felt a little bad, because maybe she really was truthful. But nope, you reject her and boom, she goes nuts. I'm sorry, my man, nobody should have to endure what you're going through. I wish you the best of luck. I hope you can get over all of this someday. On a side note, the friends she did these with uncovered her. You said they were your friends as well? They are not. Consider contacting an attorney to get them to send her a cease and desist letter, because what she's doing is libel, especially the claims of emotional mistreatment. It may not miraculously recover your reputation, but it should at least stop her from saying anything else for fear of getting sued. If you have a friend you trust, get them to go stay at your apartment until Sarah leaves, because it isn't at all unlikely that she'll destroy things if left there unsupervised, if she hasn't already. No matter what though, don't go stay yourself if no one else goes with you. Never be alone with her again because she will likely claim you have worse. If you do have to communicate with her, only do so via text or email, or some other written form. If voice is the only possible way, then put an app on your phone that records phone calls, if single-party consent is legal in your area. It's hard to recognize now, But any of your friends who believed her lies and cut you off, were never really your friends, and you'll be better off without them. Hang out with Sam more often, build a new friend group, sue her to oblivion if she damages your property or apartment. He could, and maybe should, sue her for defamation of character too. And that's it for this video guys. If you have thoughts to share, leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like this content. I'll catch you in the next one. Good day everyone. My ex-fiancée cheated on me 4 years ago. I picked myself up and came back stronger than ever. This happened some time ago, but I thought I'd share it in the hopes of showing people who have been destroyed by infidelity that your world is not over, and that things can only get better from here on out. Disclaimer: names and some minor details have been changed for identity protection purposes. I met my ex-fiancée, let's call her Jane, 7 years ago in a coffee shop. I was standing behind her in a long, slow-moving queue and we just started talking. We hit it off immediately, and even sat and drank our coffee together for about an hour. We eventually exchanged numbers before going our separate ways. At first, I was very hesitant to get serious with her, because I had just started as an analyst at a large investment bank and the hours were absolutely brutal, think 70 to 80 hours a week when things were slow and up to 120 plus when we were on live deals. I had also heard many relationship horror stories from my fellow junior colleagues, about how all of their relationships had failed due to the crushing hours and not being able to see their significant others on a consistent basis. However, after a few dates with Jane, it was clear that I was falling for her, and that she had felt the same way about me. I brought up my concerns about my work hours causing our relationship to fail, and she told me that she really liked me, how it would be a shame if we didn't even try, and that if we stayed committed and were understanding towards one another, any storm could be weathered. She was true to her word. The next 3 years were filled with Everest-like highs and hellish lows, but we persevered. She was patient and understanding, and never made me feel guilty about all the super late nights spent at work and not with her. She showered me with love, care, and affection and often told me how grateful she was to be with an amazing person like me. I in turn, did everything humanly possible to love her like she deserved to be loved. To everyone's surprise, after the end of this 3-year period, we were going stronger than ever, whilst all of my fellow analysts' relationships crumbled and burned. During this period, I decided that the time was right for me to start recruiting for private equity roles. If successful, my hours would be drastically reduced and my already insanely high pay would increase even further. I also decided that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with Jane, this amazing woman who had stuck with me, even through my sucky banking years as a junior. I bought a ring and proposed to her while we were on vacation in Spain. She said yes, and I was on top of the world. Now, this is the part where everything goes to crap. She was in the shower one day and had left her phone on the bedside table. I had just the slightest urge to snoop. At this point, she had done nothing at all that would lead me to suspect that she was cheating, and I had no gut feelings that something was up and whatnot. I just had a slight urge, and it's not like she was ever going to find out that I had snooped. Long story short, I snooped and I found a name, female, in her chats that I didn't recognize. I clicked in and what I saw, simultaneously enraged me and broke my heart. Lots of sweet nothings, nudes etc. Even some texts of them comparing the size of my manhood to his. What made all of this worse was that he looked to be taller than me and was far better looking than me. I am 5 feet 9 inches and only slightly above average in the looks department. I was shaking quite badly, and feeling so sick that I put the phone down and went out to have a breather. My thoughts were racing as I strolled down the pavement. My first thought was that maybe this was my fault, and that she just wanted to feel loved and I couldn't give her as much attention as she needed due to my work. Pathetic, right? I wanted to confront her when I got back, but I was afraid to because I loved her dearly, and my confronting her might ruin us. My thoughts continued running wild, ranging from, hey, this isn't that bad, right? It's just a couple of texts, it not like they had you just have to put in a little more effort and she'll love you again, to, how dare she do something so disgusting to you behind your back? I ultimately decided that I needed more proof before making a decision, as if the texts weren't enough. I went and bought a small camera and hid it among some stuff atop a shelf in the corner of our bedroom. I activated it the next day before going to work. Later that night at around 10, I activated the camera and saw exactly what I was hoping not to, but expecting to see, her getting railed by the guy that she was texting on her phone. All hopes of reconciliation and any love that I still had for her was thrown out of the window instantly. I threw up in the bathroom and immediately left the office for my best friend's house, let's call him Owen, where I broke down and cried harder than I have ever cried in my 25 years of existence. When I had calmed down, me and Owen sipped on stiff scotch, and planned my next move after I was done venting. We talked throughout the night until the next morning when we both had to leave for work. He suggested that I don't confront and end my engagement to Jane outright, but instead act cordial around her until I had found a new job, hopefully in private equity and a new flat, then block her phone, email and on all forms of social media etc. and move out while she's at work. One day I'd be kissing her goodbye in the morning, and next, I'd be gone like I never existed. That would hit her like a truck, he told me. I was 100% on board with this plan, but I told him that I'd prefer to move to a whole new continent, probably New York where I'd truly be gone. He told me he'd miss me if I did so, but if that was what I felt was necessary he'd support my decision. I trudged into work like a zombie later that day, but the massive weight weighing me down had been lifted considerably. The next month was the most difficult that I had ever had to endure. Being around Jane anytime I was at home and having to act normal was excruciatingly painful. I could barely look her in the eyes without feeling the urge to physically harm her. But I managed to put on a brave face and act affectionate towards her. We even slept a few times, which left me feeling disgusting and weak. She had told everyone that we were engaged, and when she brought up the wedding, I lied that we might have to wait a few months as things were heating up at work, and I would be overwhelmingly busy. I gave the same answer to the hordes of mutual friends and family, who were now calling to wish us congratulations. I broke down in the office toilet a few times late at night knowing she was probably sleeping with AP at that very moment. It was a miracle that I managed to hold out for as long as I did. Me staying at the office as late as possible or just walking around the city when I finished earlier than usual helped. Meanwhile, I was reaching out to headhunters in New York hoping to recruit for private equity associate roles there, whilst simultaneously studying for their LBO modeling tests. I had also told my other close friends what I was planning to do, and they all told me they'd support me 100% no matter what I decide. After a few weeks of interviews with headhunters, I had a few interviews with New York-based private equity firms lined up. Everything was going just as planned, but this isn't a fantasy world, this is life, and life soon threw me a curveball that shattered my plan completely, but not in the way that you might be thinking. I went out with Owen and another one of my friends, let's call him Antoine, one Friday night and we ended up mingling with a group of people that Antoine knew. Among them was one of the most beautiful girls I had ever seen. I talked to her for a bit and we got on well. Her name was Elisa and she was Swedish. She was absolutely stunning and looked like Elsa Hosk. She wasn't like Elsa Hosk's identical twin. If you put them both side by side, you'd know who was Elsa and who was Elisa, but you get what I mean. We had a lot in common, namely she was doing her master's at my alma mater and as a matter of fact, was doing the exact same program that I did, and that we had both grown up in Asia. I was planning to jet off to New York ASAP, but I just couldn't resist exchanging numbers with her. We ended up going on a few dates and sleeping together. I had never felt this wanted and understood by anyone before, not even by Jane in the early stages of our relationship. And for the first time in weeks, I was genuinely happy. One night after sleeping together, we confided in each other our deepest feelings. She brought up how she was cheated on by her ex, I didn't prompt her, and how she hated and had absolutely no respect for infidels. I then explained to her my current situation and she laughed, not at me, but in amusement and in awe at how I was going to drop a sledgehammer on Jane. She then asked me if there was any chance that I would stay and not leave to New York. I said I would consider it, but deep down, I no longer wanted to leave. I of course had no intention of getting involved with anyone, but Elisa was just so amazing and I couldn't help but fall for her. Her views on infidelity also somewhat reassured me that she would never betray me in such a horrible way like Jane did should we end up together. What a massive curveball she was. Now, some may say this is cheating on Jane and I'm just as evil as her now. I disagree with the former, because she cheated first, so from that point on, I had no obligation to remain faithful to her any longer. I agree with the latter, I am a savage. After interviewing with multiple firms, I got an offer to join the New York office of a large private equity fund. After inquiring about joining the London office instead, the managing director put me in touch with his counterpart in London. 2 interviews later, I received and accepted the offer to join the London office. I was overjoyed. For anyone not in finance, an investment banker managing to make the leap to private equity is considered a massive step up. I held a small celebration at my flat after my first day at the new fund to commemorate this achievement. Owen, Antoine and his significant other, Antoine had recently made the jump to private equity and has also worked at the fund I had just joined, and another friend came. I asked Elisa to come too and she gladly accepted. She came the latest, but when she showed up, she gave me a kiss and a hug telling me how proud she was of me. I closed my eyes and held her for an extra second, savoring this moment. We sat around the island in my kitchen, talking, laughing, and just having a splendid time. Just then, Jane came home. It was 1 a.m. at the time. She could have had a busy day at work, but had most likely just finished sleeping with AP. We glanced at the door to see who had just come in, but otherwise didn't acknowledge her presence. Everyone at the table knew precisely what was going on. Elisa had her hand around my shoulder when Jane got back, but didn't put it down. All of us just continued talking and not letting Jane's presence disrupt our good vibes. Jane tried inserting herself between me and Elisa, quite awkwardly I might add, but ended up having to sit on my other side. We continued our conversation, pretending that Jane wasn't there. I ignored her too and had my body turned towards Elisa the whole time. I could sense that Jane was extremely uncomfortable. At around 2, everyone decided to pop off to go home and get some sleep. I opened the door and showed everyone out, then after some deliberation, put on my shoes and followed them. Jane asked me where I was going with a tinge of worry in her voice. "I'll be back in a bit," I responded and closed the door before she could respond. I woke up at around 8, Elisa was still asleep next to me, so I just planted a small kiss on her head and headed home to carry out the final stage of my new plan. I had silenced my phone before going to bed because it was blowing up with text messages and calls from Jane. When I got home, Jane was sitting at the island looking dejected, her eyes and nose were red from crying. If this was before she had betrayed me, my heart would have broken for her and I would have done anything to cheer her up. But after what she had done, I felt nothing, not even a shred of sympathy. "Where were you?" she asked. "I fell asleep in the car," I replied. I didn't own a car, but at that point, I didn't even care if my answers were incoherent. Got to freshen up and get to work. I then hopped into the shower. I got out and put on my suit, then realized that she had to feel at ease if she was to leave for work, and she couldn't be at home if my plan was to succeed. All dressed up, I got out of the room, approached Jane and gently placed my hand on her cheek. "Look," I told her in a gentle tone whilst looking into her eyes, "I have to go to work now, but I promise I'll come home earlier today to talk about this, okay?" I then kissed her forehead gently and told her I loved her. That was the last fake sincere kiss I ever gave her, and I was glad that I never had to do it again. The final stage of my new plan was to move out and ghost her, but instead of moving to New York, I would now be moving into the new and vastly more luxurious flat compared to my current one, that I had secured the previous week in an affluent neighborhood near the city center. I had taken a day from work to move out, because weekdays were when Jane was away from home for the longest and most consistent period of time. I met up with Owen and Antoine for breakfast at a nearby restaurant. They too had taken a day to help me out. When we were done, I checked her location on my phone and sure enough she was at work. We went back to my old flat and packed all of my things that I hadn't moved to Owen's flat into his car and left. I did feel a little sad leaving the flat that I had called home for the past 3 years, but this was a new beginning and change isn't always easy. The lease on the old flat was in my name and it expires in 2 months. But with my new salary, 2 months worth of rent at the old flat was nothing to me. Besides, paying 2 months worth of rent to have my traitor of a fiance's life fall apart was quite the bargain. After I moved out, life was incredible. My new job was amazing and I was enjoying myself. I had a lot more free time now. I started boxing regularly again and actually had time to sleep at night. My friends said I look a lot healthier and happier. I felt that way too. Me and Elisa made our relationship official and we were extremely happy together. She even managed to get an offer to join a different private equity fund straight out of school, which is a very impressive feat. I can say that I was happier than I had ever been since leaving school. As for Jane, my disappearance hit her like an uppercut to the chin that she didn't recover from for a long time. All of my friends were bombarded at one point with messages and calls from her, asking about me. I had blocked her from everything, phone, social media, etc. She still had the engagement ring I gave her, but my plan wouldn't have been much of an uppercut if I had asked for it back. As for her relationship with AP, I never found out nor did I care to find out what happened to them. If he wanted her, he could have her. Trash always end up together in a pile. One day at work, after a morning meeting I was walking back to my cubicle when I was greeted by an unsightly guest, a livid Jane standing between me and my cubicle. She lunged forward and started attacking me, streams of expletives and vitriol coming out of her mouth while she tried to slap me in the face. I deflected her blows easily. My cubicle mate Kiara and another colleague hurriedly restrained her. She fell onto her knees sobbing and droning on. I was so worried. I missed you. Where did you go? I love you. How could you do this to me? I calmly took out my phone, found the videos of her and AP getting it on and played it, shoving the phone in her face. I still find myself laughing at the look of horror on her face when I think of it sometimes. She started hyperventilating. Look, she said through her heavy breathing, I can explain, it's not what it looks like. I couldn't help but burst out laughing the line, it's not what it looks like? It was clearly her getting boned by another guy that wasn't her fiancé. I wanted to yell at her and rub all the BS that she'd done to me in her face. But in reality, it had come across as me trying to convince her that she did something egregiously wrong. She knew full well that she had messed up big time, and the guilt was already consuming her. OP, look at me, she continued softly, I love you, I will always love you, as long as the sky is blue, I will love you. Here in London, the sky's always grey, I quipped back with a straight face and a smug tone. Kiara covered her mouth with her hand, stifling a laugh. Jane's tears were still in free flow as security intervened and escorted her out of the office. Another dose of karma hit Jane literally an hour later. I had arranged to meet with Elisa for lunch. When I got to my building lobby, she was already waiting for me. We kissed, then walked hand in hand towards the exit and right into Jane's bewildered face. There was an awkward pause, with the three of us staring at each other. Jane proceeded to fall on her knees, again, and started bawling. Probably just jealous that I'd left her for someone far more beautiful, or probably just consumed by guilt and regret. I'd never know, and frankly, I don't care to know. Me and Elisa just sidestepped her and walked out into the open. The rest of this story involving Jane just has to do with the engagement and her friends and family, but that's a story for another time. As for me, life is still amazing. I was given the nod for VP, Vice President, promotion at my fund last month and am on track to make partner before I turn 40, hopefully. Elisa has become my new fiancée. I proposed to her last summer and she tearfully accepted. We love each other dearly. We plan to get married when the pandemic is over and are already talking about having children together. The new lockdown really sucks for everyone, but we are very fortunate to have each other to count on during such trying times. That's my story, guys. I just wanted to share this in order to show that if you're a victim on infidelity, it's not the end of the world. You can always bounce back, level up and reach new highs that you never thought possible. Have a great day, everyone. Now for the last story. My wife, 34, hides our marriage at work and with her friends. I, 32, and her have been married for the past 3 years. I'm confused what to do. We are married since 2 years. Things were difficult for us because my family was not ready for the marriage yet. But anyway, we went ahead and registered for a court marriage. My family is fine with us now, but don't involve themselves too much. There have been ups and downs, and we don't stay together all the time. In about a week, I stay 3 to 5 days with my wife and 2 to 3 days with my family. The relationship is fine, although there have been a few problems as well. After about a year since our marriage, we fought and broke up for a week. But then gradually we made peace. A few months later, I found out she was too friendly with her co-worker. I was not aware of it, but I just happened to check her phone and then she didn't let me read the conversation with his co-worker. I believe it was her boyfriend, so I broke up with her again for 6 to 8 months. After this period, we got along again, with me being half-hearted. But anyway, she was applying to a new job recently, when she said she was not married, which was a shock for me, so I confronted her. She put up some SHT like we don't stay together and I don't have a job, and we are not like regular couples and stuff like that. I'm confused. Even if I don't have a job temporarily, lying about being single and denying the marriage is something hard to swallow. Also, I don't take any financial help from her, so I'm no burden on her. What should I do? I'm a bit attached to her, but is it worth going ahead in this marriage? Now for the top advice. I'm hella confused as to how you're married but not living together. Why did you get married if she doesn't want to tell people about you? You're half living with your parents, and you're not working to support the life you're building together. I don't understand. You're married and think she has a boyfriend? You spend 1/3 of the week with your family? You two don't need to be together. She had a boyfriend earlier, now he's not there. I'm not even sure if it was her BF, but when she didn't let me read their conversation, I guess it was her BF. 1/3 of the week with my family, and wife lives in a different home. You're confused, I'm confused. You broke up with your wife and don't live with her? Might be legal, but sorry, not really a marriage. Some employers may discriminate against a married woman, figuring she could get pregnant at any moment, she won't tolerate travel, etc. More likely she wants to make herself seem single so she can get another boyfriend like she has done in her past. The fact that she's cheated before and is hiding the fact that she's married, certainly points to that conclusion. And that's it for this video, guys. If you have thoughts to share, leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like this content. I'll catch you in the next one. Good day, everyone. My dad disowned my sister and he is dying. How do I convince her to let him go? My family used to be really close, but that changed in 2003 when my dad, 55 male, discovered that my mom, 54 female, was having an affair with John, 54 male, my dad's childhood best friend. He was basically his brother back then, and he was my dad's best man in his wedding with mom. He begged her to stay and work things out, but my mom ended up leaving him for John, and eventually they got a divorce and my mom ended up marrying John 5 months later. My twin sister Sarah, 27 female, was always the stereotypical daddy's girl. Dad spoiled her a bit more than the rest of us and she was basically his shadow back then, and that's why it was really surprising to us that Sarah chose to stay with our mom after the divorce. Back then me, 27 male, and her were the only ones to still live with our parents. We have other 4 brothers. I choose to stay with dad and Sarah choose to live with mom, and in the weekends, she come to stay with me and dad. I choose to stay with dad and I occasionally went to mom's house. To say that the divorce and my sister choosing to stay with mom messed up my dad, is an understatement. He tried to act like he was okay in front of us, but every single weekday for the year following the divorce, I could hear him cry himself to sleep. After the divorce, the relationship between Sarah and dad didn't change that much. He started to spoil her a bit more than the usual and still remained the usual super dad, showing up in every parent-teacher conference, ballet recitals and soccer matches, and being the most present dad possible. Things started to change when she suddenly changed her mind about med school. Our dad is a surgeon, and she always said that she wanted to follow his steps, but mom and John ended up pressuring her to change her career path to become a lawyer. Mom and John are both lawyers. During her studies, John started mentoring her and they become really close. After she finished her education, he got her a job at his law firm. Onto the issue, in 2017 Sarah got married. My dad was absolutely thrilled about her wedding. He gave Sarah a blank check for her dream wedding. To be fair, he did this to all of us. He really liked weddings. But in Sarah's case, he was really excited because she is his only daughter and I always remembered him talking about walking her down the aisle. Like every wedding that we went to, he always said to her that he couldn't wait for the day to walk down his little girl down the aisle. One day before the wedding, Sarah drops the bomb that dad and John will be walking her down the aisle together. Well, dad is the most non-confrontational person to walk on this earth and she expected him to just suck it up. He didn't do that. They got into a huge fight. First time I see he get angry, and in the end he didn't attend the wedding. And John ended up walking Sarah down the aisle. The fallout was massive. After the wedding, dad and his side of our family basically disowned her, and their relationship became non-existent. She tried to reach out after a while and make amends several times, but he simply didn't want to talk or hear about her. We expected him to turn around when she gave birth in 2018, but he doesn't even want to meet her kids. Earlier this year, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and unfortunately, the treatment didn't work and he is terminal. Even with that, he still doesn't want to see her again and she doesn't understand that. I am very close to my dad, and these last few weeks are being really difficult for me. How do I convince her to let him go? Now for the top advice before we read the update. There really isn't anything you can do. There is no way to make this less awkward or horrible for her. She made her choices years ago. Now she has to live, and die, with the consequences. I know you would like to make it easier, but I would just step back from this. The only statement should be, I'm sorry, dad still doesn't want to see you. And spend all your energy on your dad. Not on a dead relationship. I would say, that by her choosing the man who took his wife and life away, to walk her down the aisle, that she was the one who chose to disown her father. She needs to live with the consequences. Absolutely. To wait a day before the wedding to drop that bomb. She knew it wasn't going to go over well. Terrible situation all around. Are people glossing over the fact the daughter took her dad's money for a dream wedding, and after it was spent then she tells him, oh by the way, that dream of you walking me down the aisle, you need to share that dream with the guy that stole your wife and split up your family. That was an absolutely scumbag move. is what I was thinking. The dad was a walking bank account to her, and she never considered all the efforts he did for her. Yes, it's okay to change plans and decide different careers. But he spoiled her, loved her unconditionally, followed her with admiration and care, and she brings a blow like this upon the father who lost everything. She took him for granted. Daddy, thanks for paying for my dream wedding. I need to tell you one thing, I want you to walk me down the aisle with the guy that effed mommy behind your back, and then stole her away. Do you remember him? Your former best friend turned most hated enemy? Yeah, I want to give that man equal honor as father of the bride. I don't understand why you're upset, Daddy. All of this. Any idiot would know that this would cause a problem, and she had to be a cruel, spineless person to spring this on her dad, on the day of the wedding rehearsal. And now for the update. A week after I posted the original post, my dad started getting worse. His health started declining really fast. We lost him exactly 1 month ago. It wasn't pretty. I never thought it would be, but I never thought it would be that heartbreaking. He was in a lot of pain. He'd been through so much in these last months. As heartbreaking as it was for us, he deserved to rest. He was tired. In the end, he was lucid enough to say his goodbyes to me and my older brothers. Hearing him saying what he said to me was one of the most painful and beautiful moments of my life. His words to me meant a lot. I won't say exactly what he said because I believe that it's just too personal. He said goodbye to my daughters, 11-month-old and 2-year-old. It was just like when I was a kid. He gave them a kiss on the forehead, told them to be good girls, and said that he loved them. It was something I won't ever forget, and it hurts like hell that they are so young to understand what happened. They still ask about Grandpa, and every time I try to explain to them that he isn't coming back, they don't seem to understand that, and how can I blame them? I'm only 27 years old, I honestly don't get it. I was supposed to get a lot more years with my dad. It doesn't seem fair at all. The worst part was my twin sister Sarah. Dad died without speaking to her. I tried to talk to him about her, but he wasn't interested in speaking to her. She started getting more desperate and suddenly, he died. It was expected, but she was in denial. His funeral was beautiful. A lot of people shared their stories about him. It was nice. Sarah saw Dad for the first time since the night before her wedding. She didn't recognize him. He was very skinny. Dad was always a bit overweight, the famous dad bod, but he had lost a lot of weight from cancer. She cried a lot during the whole funeral. Mom and John tried to show up at the ceremony, and my uncles were forced to kick them out of the funeral. Good freaking riddance. Dad's will went as expected as it could. Dad's family came from old money, petrochemicals, so he always had a lot of money. He left a little bit of money and properties divided equally to all his kids, including Sarah. He left a trust fund, which was a lot of money, for all his grandkids, including Sarah's kids which he never met. It was honestly expected. My dad never really cared about money that much. He just wanted us to be comfortable and assured that his grandkids all had something to support them. The tricky part was the personal things. He left a really big letter to all of us, except Sarah. It was really personal stuff. In my letter he spoke to me about our story, about my childhood. It was really nice. I must have read the letter like 100 times and I cried every single time. One of Dad's favorite hobbies was photography. He was quite an enthusiast, and the subject of his photos was pretty much our family, when he and Mom were together. Later it turned out to be just me and my siblings. As a result of this, we had a lot of pictures from us growing up. He gave each of us a photo album, and behind each photo, he wrote something, where it was taken in a few words. I was honestly very surprised with this. He must have done this long before he died. It was a very thoughtful goodbye gift, something that was very typical of Dad. Sarah didn't get a letter, and her album didn't have anything written behind her photos, and when she found out about this, she had a mental breakdown. The regret was eating her alive, still is. She was admitted to a hospital and spent an entire week there. She is doing a bit better now, getting a little better every day. Her husband and I are really confident in her recovery. She is sleeping and eating almost normally now. She still starts to cry randomly multiple times on a daily basis, but it's getting better, at least that's what I am telling myself. Which brings us to last week. My wife and I discovered that we are expecting again. It wasn't planned or anything like that. My wife switched birth control last month and she spent a week without taking the pill. It's still very early in her pregnancy, so we haven't told anyone yet. The thing is, that I'm really angry. I'm angry that my future kid is not going to be able to meet Dad. I'm freaking pissed honestly. It doesn't seem fair at all. I'm angry and I'm scared. My dad was supposed to guide me in the whole parenthood process. He was teaching me a lot of us with my daughters. I'm freaking scared of doing this without him. I'm scared of not being a good father like he was to me, because my kids deserve that. This is it, folks. This whole situation could be a lot better. I play the what if scenario on my head every day. Unfortunately, it doesn't change anything. This is honestly a bitter ending, doesn't seem fair at all, but that's the thing about life, it's actually never fair. I want to thank everyone who gave me advice and to everyone who reached out and offered their support in the chat. I was very lonely at that time, still am, haha, this year honestly, it meant a lot to me. Thank you, Reddit. Now for some comments. This whole situation is sad. It really is. My condolences, man. You Mom and John sound like very entitled a-holes judging from what you wrote in the update. To have the audacity to show up after all they did. What exactly were they thinking? Or smoking? Anyways, I believe that Sarah will be okay, but will probably not fully recover for a long time. She needs therapy. And you and your family have to focus on your own healing at the moment. Oh, and congrats on the new baby/babies. Tell them about their grandpa one day. I read your last post. Your dad sounded like a genuinely good person who fell for the wrong kind of woman, and this tribute post by you makes me sound even better. I can only imagine how bad you feel. My condolences. Honestly, your mom and John, having the nerve to show up at his funeral after everything they did. Goddamn narcissists. It's unfortunate that your sister never got to reconcile with your dad. But that's completely on her. Choices have consequences and she made a bad choice. She'll live with this regret for the rest of her life, but hopefully she'll use the regret to become a better human being. You and your siblings seriously need to think about cutting John and your mom out of your lives. They're not good people. It's extremely sad that in the end your sister will have to live with her guilt for the rest of her life, and she couldn't even make it right with him before he passed. Honestly, I really don't know much else to say other than advise your sister to go to therapy to cope. But I don't think she'll ever forgive herself for what she did. She should feel guilty, and I am glad his dad never gave in. Now she will know the misery that he felt when she told him he was going to walk her down the aisle with John, and she will feel that for the rest of her life, which she deserves. Now for the last story. I, 37 male, have a biological child who I've never seen, 17 female, wanting to make contact which I don't want, but my family does. What should I do here? When I was 19, I was violated by an older colleague, 34 female, after a works night out and she got pregnant. It didn't go anywhere legally, as it was my word against hers and she had the kid. Sadly, as there's no proof it wasn't consensual, I had to pay child maintenance until it was 16. Obviously, as it was a product of what happened to me, I wanted nothing to do with it. Told her to raise her unwanted baby herself. The woman died, not sorry about it, a couple of years back, and I've not heard anything about the kid since, so I had no idea what was going on other than my maintenance stopping. Which was a relief, because I finally felt like a millstone had been lifted from around my neck. Because of what happened, I never have been in relationships because of the issues it's caused me, and I haven't got any kids or anything like that, so I feel like I can start living a bit. Brought down to earth a bit last month, when my mom said the kid got in touch with her on social media, and asked about me/my family, and told them she was living with her grandparents herself after her mom died, until they both died themselves, so she doesn't have anyone now. Now my mom is one of these people with a massive soft spot for kids/young people, so feels sorry for her. I told her I don't feel comfortable with her being in touch with us and I want nothing to do with her, so keep her away from me. She seemed upset, but I thought she accepted it. I will say, through it all, my parents have been an absolute rock. They were some of the only people to support me, and I couldn't have done it without them. So, I was talking to my mom at the weekend, and she admitted to me that she's not only kept in touch with the kid, but she had met them the week before, and they didn't tell me. Basically, they feel really bad for her, because of the life she's had and are starting to enjoy her being in their life. Not only that, she's been asking about me and what happened, and wants to meet me to talk and ask me questions. Obviously, I'm upset about it. I not only had to go for going against my wishes, but for betraying my trust like that. She said it's hard for her and my dad because of the way I've been, never had any kids or anything. They have always been sad that they'll never have a grandchild, and this may be their only chance. She also told me she thinks I'm being out of order, taking it out on an innocent child who didn't ask for this, and could at least meet her to talk. I've said no, and not spoken since, which is hard because I normally ring my folks twice a day, and my mom keeps on trying to ring me. I don't know what to do, Reddit. I obviously don't want to be cruel, But that kid is a reminder of what happened to me, and I am just angry she's coming back into my life now when I thought it could be over. And how could my parents do this to me when they know how I feel? As it stands, I have no desire to meet her, and don't see the good that could come from it. But I don't want to lose my parents either. What should I do? Now for the top advice. I'm sorry for what you've been through all those years ago, and I'm more sorry that you've suffered all these years since. Have you ever been to therapy to help you cope with what happened to you, and begin to heal? I have, but I don't think it's really helped me so far, so I abandoned it. Go to a therapist that specifically works with trauma. It is a special training that many don't have. There are bad therapists and good therapists. Find one that works for you. There is no need to be a prisoner for the rest of your life over this. That's just how I've felt all these years, but never been able to put it into words. Thank you. I think you need to go to counseling to practice enforcing strong boundaries if you want to maintain a relationship with your family. You did not want that child, you did what you had to do by paying child support. It's sad that she lost her mom and now wants to meet you. You may be biologically related to her, but you are not her dad, and you made it clear right from the beginning. You are not the bad person here. This is just an unfortunate situation for everyone involved. Doesn't change the fact that there's an innocent 17-year-old girl with no family whatsoever. OP doesn't have to be a father figure to this child, but she's still a biological offspring of her grandparents, and it's not fair to tell them they cannot help this girl out of a terrible situation. Is it OP's responsibility? No. Would it be easier to forget she existed? Yes. Does it change the fact that she does exist? No. This situation is tragic, and it's going to cause hurt to someone, regardless of the decision made. Either OP, a 37-year-old man, can be reminded of an awful experience but still be surrounded by loved ones. Or a 17-year-old girl can be reminded of her own awful experiences losing everyone she is close with, and be surrounded by no one. I know this will be the unpopular opinion, but I feel that the 17-year-old girl's welfare takes priority. He doesn't have to be in his daughter's life, but he can't ask his parents to ignore this girl after she has reached out to them. I think it's likely the girl has no idea how she was conceived. It would make the most sense to me for your mother to tell her. If she can understand why you don't want to see her, it will help her to respect your boundaries. At the same time, as far as your parents are concerned, this is a minor blood relative that needs help, who is technically their son's child. I don't see a person who has compassion being able to turn her away. At the same time too, it's absolutely inappropriate for her to force a relationship between you two. If she persists, don't speak to her. Edit. So, I spoke to my mom today. She's still insistent on having a relationship with her. I said she can, but tell her I do not want to meet her at all, and won't do it all. Would you believe my folks are actually intending on her coming over and having Christmas dinner with us? I basically said if they do that, I'm not going. Important edit. I get people disagreeing with my parents' actions, but do not be disrespectful of them or call them names please. Despite this, they're wonderful people and were the only people who have ever had my back throughout. Thank you. And that's it for this video guys. If you have thoughts to share, leave a comment below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you like this content. I'll catch you in the next one. Good day everyone.